in the problems in our urban areas, in the black community, and other communities, that breakdown of morals, in my opinion, is encouraged by the elites because, again, you use that breakdown as a kind of solvent, breaking down the family structure, breaking down the sense of individual responsibility, breaking down the ability of people to sustain themselves economically, so that in various ways they become more and more dependent on government. And a lot of these population control policies take place in the context of this breakdown because they want to promote contraception and sterilization and abortion and other things that violate the basic premises of conscience in order to achieve this objective of controlling the population. And we're to be distracted from the fact that the real objective isn't population control at all. It is actually to promote the moral corrosion that then allows the elites to control the people. So it's population control in another sense.
I know in this article they said that Brazil was, I don't know what the word is, shocked to find that the Brazilian government was shocked to find that an estimated 44% of all Brazilian women aged between 14 and 55 had been permanently sterilized. How could that happen? And the government be shocked?
Well, I find it hard to believe. You know, that reminds me of that scene from what's the famous movie Casablanca, where the French police commissioner who gambles at the casino frequently and during the course of things and so forth and so on. At one point, he stages a raid on the casino where he gambles and walks through the door and says, "I'm shocked to find gambling going on in here." Well, I think that's the kind of shock that's being expressed by the Brazilian government, but who knows?
You know, there was a story in Chile where a lawyer, a female lawyer, a Chilean lawyer, went in for an examination. She was pregnant, and when she woke up, they had taken her child. And in inquiring, she found out that there was an incentive paid to the doctors for every abortion, and that they were as a due matter of course, aborting as many children as they could find a reason to or not find a reason to. And it was a big stink at the time.
Sadly, this is what happens when you forget what, in my opinion, are moral basics, especially when it comes to our sense of individual liberty and what's right with respect to dealing with individuals. I ask a question. I often ask people this. If they can tell me what is the first form of property?
Well, your body.
Well, the body.
Yourself.
Yes. And then what?
Then,
what's the first form of belonging? Your first belonging, what is it?
You mean...
Because the philosophers have often speculated, Rousseau, a lot of people like this, and they talk about, you know, the labor theory of value, where you go out, you mix your labor with something, and that makes it yours, right? But there is actually a kind of belonging that does not involve that kind of labor, where you're appropriating an external object to yourself. And that is the belonging that is involved in family life. In point of fact, the belonging of child with parent and parent with child, so that there is a sense not only of attachment, mutual recognition, of obligation, and so forth. That is a primordial form of belonging that is constitutive, if I can put it that way, constitutive element of the basic concept of what property is all about. If you look at these policies, one of the aims that's being achieved is to destroy that understanding of property at its very foundation. So that in a sense, the form of belonging that is the characteristic of the first human community, which is the family, is denied. So that again, having removed that from the scene, the one that has a natural basis that leads to claims on the part of parents that their authority should be respected, which is a part of the whole doctrine that we are all, as we come from the hand of God, entitled to be respected in certain things we have the right to do, like preserve ourselves and take care of our children and so forth and so on. All that's being thrown aside in order to substitute for it an understanding of how you can treat people that's essentially based on power calculations, and that therefore benefits the powerful at the expense of the mass of the people.
There's a discussion that you and I had, that the whole world is having right now, about whether a person is wrong if they've done something that is defined by both morality and law as wrong if you wait long enough. And that, of course, is this case of Roman Polanski, who at age 44 told a 13-year-old girl that she could meet a movie star, that when she got to the movie star's house, that she was fed drugs, quaaludes, and given alcohol until she was no longer basically conscious. And then he raped in every way, shape, and form that 13-year-old child. He was caught. He was found guilty, admitted that he did it, and he was sentenced initially to a modest sentence. Then the judge said that modest sentence isn't enough. It's a more serious crime, raping a 13-year-old child. And then he ran and has spent 30 years not coming to the United States. He's recently been arrested on an international warrant, and we have America arguing whether or not this person should be held to task for an admitted violation of both moral and legal rules. Now, isn't that addressing the very same issue you're talking about?
In many ways, it is, partly because of what it involved there, because I think there, as we saw with the legitimization of homosexuality, there has been a move afoot, part of that movement, a kind of subculture within it, to legitimize pedophilia, the use of children and abuse of children for sexual purposes. Where did our sense that that's not allowed come from? Sometimes I think we forget the history, which is that in most parts of the world, including Europe, people we would regard as children were considered to be folks that you could have sexual relations with. For hundreds and hundreds of years, that didn't really start to change fundamentally until you get to the 19th century. And what was that the result of? I think that it was to a large degree the result of a maturing Christian understanding, and it took maturing. It wasn't something that just happened. And a sense that there had to be a certain respect for the potential humanity of the child, even though the faculties and other things might not be fully developed, that then led you to respect the dignity and worth of that human being so that it could not be abused and exploited by people who had more knowledge and more experience and who were at a somewhat greater stage in the development of their faculties. And in order to protect those individuals from exploitation while they grew, the sense developed that one could not allow the exploitation of young children for sexual purposes. That's, in my opinion, a reflection of an advance in human ethical understanding, one that takes seriously the relationship between human sexuality and human personality in the full sense, that takes seriously the relationship between sexual relations and the capacity responsibly to act in the context of procreation and childbearing and child rearing, the real responsibilities of family life. But it also reflects, I think, the acceptance of the fact that there had to be respect for basic human equality, and that the inequalities of power and knowledge and circumstance couldn't be abused in order to allow some people to take their pleasure at the expense of others. Well, that sense that in a moral sense, there is an equality among human beings that has to be observed. I think that's also the target here, because we're supposed to look at this and we're supposed to be thinking, as I think some of these elites do, that, well, come on, Roman Polanski, he's not like other people. He's this creative person, and he's produced these movies and so forth and so on. So that if you have talent and ability and success and money and so forth and so on, well, you're a different kind of person, and we shouldn't really be holding you to the same standard of accountability in the way that you treat people. That's an aristocratic mentality, to use the old word. It's a mentality that says there are people who are of a different sort, of a different class, and they don't have to have the same regard for the lower classes of human beings that the law requires of other people. Are we going to let this happen? That we should return our